So kidney stones, aka nephrolithiasis, from lithiasis for stones, nephro for kidney. So these arise when your urinary concentration gets too high. So the concentration of solutes in the urine have super high concentration, and then they can precipitate out and make stones. So normally these stones will pass through the urinary tract on its own. So let's say kidney, stone starts here, you have a ureter, bladder, okay, and then urethra. Normally it just passes by itself. But it can cause symptoms and complications if it gets obstructed anywhere along the tract. So if it gets here, it gets stuck here, that's when you get symptoms. If it's just passing through without any problems, you're not going to get any symptoms, okay? Now, what are the risk factors? Well, I just told you that the main reason why this happens is if you have high concentration. And you can have high urine concentration. When does your urine get turned, I guess, the most dark and very high concentration? When you're not drinking enough water, when you have insufficient fluid intake, so there's not enough water going into the urine to dilute all the solutes. That's the very number one biggest risk factor for kidney stones. Okay. And then what happens? What symptoms would you get? First of all, when do you get symptoms? I asked you. You get symptoms again when you get obstruction anywhere along the urinary tract. Okay. And the symptoms you would get would include hematuria, so blood in the urine, and severe, misspelled that, severe colicky flank pain. Okay. Again, symptoms only occur if there's obstruction in the ureter. Hematuria because the kidney can obstruct and cause damage surrounding areas. You can get bleeding. And the reason why you can get colicky flank pain is, let's say it gets stuck in the ureter, which is the most common areas of obstruction. It gets stuck in the ureter, and guess what? Your ureter actually peristalsis, okay? It's kind of like the GI tract. It also peristalsis to get urine out. So it's going to get stuck, and when the ureter peristalsis, you're going to get all this increased pressure over here, and that's going to cause pain. Okay, it's going to be a colicky flank pain. And flank pain, I never really understood what the heck that meant. This is the front. This is the back. The area in red, that's the flank pain, okay? That's the flank. And it wraps all the way around the side and goes all the way to the back. And all of that from the front, from this area to the front, wraps around through the side to the back. That's all flank pain. Now, again, the stone may pass by themselves. If they do not pass by themselves, you may need some surgical intervention. Now, you can also get some, and I guess the main reason why you want to do surgical intervention is to prevent the complications. So the major complications here are obstruction of urine from the obstruction of urine flow include hydronephrosis. Remember, what did that mean? Hydro, a bunch of fluid, water in the kidney, and that's a problem. Osis, so it's the ballooning of the kidney due to obstruction because the fluid can't leave the kidney into the bladder. And the other big problem here is you can get a bad urinary tract infection. You can get an infection of the kidney here, and that can be really bad. It can really damage your kidney. And it arises, again, obstruction, same as always, we keep talking about this. Obstruction leads to stasis of urinary flow, and there's like a swamp in the kidney, and the bacteria can proliferate and overgrow in the kidney and cause an infection. Or even in the ureters too. So now I keep telling you about how obstruction is the main problem, ureter is the most common spot. And I told you about 3 locations in the ureter that were most likely to become obstructed by the stone. It's in the ureter lecture. Do you remember what the 3 most common places were? Remember, uretero-pelvic junction, where the ureter and the kidney pelvis meet. Second, pelvic brim, where the ureter crosses the external iliac artery, because that external iliac artery can push on the ureter a little bit, and so it's easier to obstruct there. Third, and the last one, uretero-vesical junction between the ureter and then the bladder, which is we call the vesicle. Okay, uretero-vesical junction. Now let's talk about the different types of kidney stones. There's many different types made of different solutes. The first 2 we're going to talk about are the calcium stones, so calcium oxalate, calcium phosphate. The risk factors for these, this is the big one, hypercalciuria, okay? I say it's the big ones, it kind of makes sense. If you have too much calcium in the urine, then you're going to risk precipitation. Again, what was the most important risk factor though? For all of these, I'm not even going to talk about it, but the most important is dehydration. I think I'm going to talk about it in one of them. Dehydration is number 1 risk factor. Okay, now, these calcium oxalate stones are the most common. Calcium stones in general are the most common. They make up 80% of all stones, with calcium oxalate being more common than calcium phosphate. And I want to talk about hypocitrate-urea. Why is this a risk factor for calcium oxalate stones? It's a risk factor because normally citrate in the urine will bind to the calcium and it makes this soluble complex with calcium, so it prevents precipitation of calcium into a stone. If you have low citrate in the urine, which is what this word means, then there's less soluble complexes of calcium. Calcium is more free to precipitate and make a stone. So that's why hypocitrate-urea is a risk factor. Also note that increased urinary pH is a risk factor. Now, how do we treat this or prophylax this mainly? How do we prevent this from happening? You give them thiazides and give them low sodium diet, and that reduces urinary calcium. We've talked a lot about the thiazide side effects and how when you block the sodium and chloride transporter, you basically block you basically increase calcium reabsorption. The other thing is you give them citrate. You give them more citrate goes into the urine, you get more soluble complexes. Now the other thing we're going to do is we're going to look at crystal shapes, because you can take a look at these crystals from the stones on the microscope, and they can tell you a lot, and you can get tested on these. So the calcium oxalate crystals make an envelope shape. Okay, this is our envelope, and this is the little thing. Looks like a Gmail sign actually, the Gmail envelope. But you see an envelope, it's a calcium oxalate stone. Next is ammonium magnesium phosphate stones. The main risk factor here is increased urinary pH. And these are super associated with infection with urease positive bacteria. And most specifically, protease is the most common one that you see. So urease hydrolyzes urea into ammonia. Okay? Ammonia is a base. So if you have a base in your urine, in your kidney, because it's an infection in the kidney, you have this bacteria in the kidney, causes this urea turns into ammonium in the kidney. You increase the urine pH there, okay, because you're adding more base. And thus you're going to increase the risk factor of this stuff developing. And what's going to happen is you're going to form a very large staghorn caliculi that's going to fill up the renal pelvis. You can see here in the red, in that renal pelvis, there's a stone there. It just fills up the whole thing. It kind of just like, it fills up all the gaps within the renal pelvis, and this is what it looks like if you took it out. Okay, it's huge. Fills up the entire renal pelvis. Now, the way you treat this or you prophylax this is you have to treat that bacterial infection. Okay, you treat that, you get rid of that bacteria. There's less urease activity. There's less, the urine pH is not elevated, and you don't get these stones. However, if you do have this big fat stone, it's not going to dissolve by itself. You need to do surgery, and you need to cut it out. You can basically dissolve it. You can use lasers. You don't have to memorize this, but that's just what they do. So now we're gonna go. Note here that I've arranged this chart in a very specific order. You're gonna see there's two more stones that we're gonna talk about, but in this top side of this chart are the ones that have predisposed by increased urine pH. Okay. Now we're going to go to this bottom side of the chart where the decreased urine pH is the risk factor. It's one of the risk factors. So uric acid stones is one of them, where decreased urine pH is the risk factor. And the other risk factor, again, is hyperuricemia, so too much uric acid in the urine. But remember, again, low urine volume is a bigger factor than even hyperuricemia for the stone. Now, for notes for this stone most stones are radiopaque except for this one. Uric acid is radiolucent. Okay, what does that mean? What does radiolucent mean again? Do you remember? It means you can't see on an X-ray. The X-rays go through it and they don't catch it. And why was that? Remember, you need a heavy metal in the stone for it to be radiopaque. You need that heavy metal to take up those X-rays. Uric acid is not a heavy metal. Your stone made of uric acid is not heavy metal, so it's radiolucent. This is the only one of all the stones that is radiolucent. And I just emphasize this because when you do it, basically, if you suspect someone has a stone, you got to give them a CAT scan usually, or sometimes you can give an X-ray. But it's a problem if these are radiolucent because you can't see them. Okay, so that's why we bring this up. So prophylaxis, how do we prophylax this? Number one, alkalinize the urine. Okay, that means basically increase the urine pH. Number two, allopurinol. Do you remember the mechanism of action of this drug? Remember, this was a xanthine oxidase inhibitor. Prevents uric acid formation. Xanthine oxidase is an enzyme that leads to uric acid formation. So this was a drug that we use in gout, but remember we have another drug that we use in gout, probenecid. You do not give that, even though gout is also from too much uric acid. Do not give probenecid to prevent uric acid stones, because probenecid, the way it works, is it prevents reabsorption of uric acid from the urine. Okay, so if you prevent reabsorption of uric acid in the urine, guess what happens to the amount of uric acid in the urine? You get hyperuricemia, and you're actually going to precipitate more uric acid stone formation. So you give them allopurinol, not probenecid. Okay, this is how it looks like. I even forgot to talk about staghorn caliculi shape. This is the coffin lid one, and then this one is the rhomboid shape. And I kind of remember this one at least, because when uric acid, how does it look like on gout? Or when you get needles, you get these needles, a bunch of needles. And so this one I can think is just like a fat needle. Okay, that's what it is. It's a rhomboid shape. It's a fat needle. So that's what I think. Needles, and they just get fatter and fatter, and they make stones. And so you get a uric acid stone that looks like a rhomboid. Finally, Cysteine Stones. Again, decreased urine pH, okay? So bottom half of the chart, decreased urine pH. Upper half of the chart, increased urine pH. This one arises from a hereditary condition where you have a defective cysteine reabsorbing transmitter in the kidneys. You also have defects in absorbing ornithine, lysine, arginine, so it's the cola. So you're not reabsorbing them, so there's more of it in the urine, and these cysteine can precipitate into stones. And this is the one that you see in kids. So if you see a kid with a kidney stone, the answer is Sistine Stones. This one's a brute force memorization, but they're going to have a positive sodium cyanide nitroprusside test. Okay, positive sodium cyanide nitroprusside test in Sistine Stones. Again, prophylaxis, you have to alkalinize in the urine. That's why I keep telling you this side is low pH, this side's upper pH. Because the treatment's always the same. You just reverse the risk factors, and in this case, risk factors are low urine pH. You alkalinize the urine. The other thing you can do is you lower the sodium diet, okay? Lowering the sodium diet enhances cysteine excretion. You can get rid of more cysteine by lowering the sodium diet. So, again, we've covered a lot. There's a lot of this is a lot of, it's tough to memorize, a lot to know. Really just, risk factors here are pretty important, because risk factors are going to govern your treatment, okay? When risk factors here, we said we're hypercalciuria. So you treat it by lowering urinary calcium, either through thiazides or low sodium diet. And then hypocitraturia, you can just brute force memorize it, but I just remember that the citrate forms soluble complex with calcium, so you can lower that as well. And then this one, the problem here was the infection. So you reverse the risk factors again and again. You reverse the risk factors. Okay, prevent infection. And remember that and then just remember the top of the chart. So it's very. I really like the location of this chart because it tells you increase urinary pH on the top. So you know that ammonium, magnesium, phosphate. If it comes second, it's on the top half of the chart. You have increased urinary pH thanks to these urease positive bacteria. So you reverse the risk factor. You treat the bacteria, and you're done. Okay. Uric acid, cysteine, lower urinary pH, alkalinize the urine to treat it. And uric acid, easy, is the only radiolucent one because it doesn't have heavy metals. And then the other thing to do is you have to pay attention to these crystal shapes. Make sure you know which one is which, because a lot of times you get tested on this. I didn't even tell you about cysteine. Cysteine is hexagonal shape, so 16 stones, cysteine, 16, with 6 sides is the Cysteine stone. So hopefully I can help you remember this a little bit better than usual. Yeah, so that's it. I guess the only hard ones to memorize really, I think, are the low sodium diet. Okay, low sodium diets are harder to remember because it's just hard. The mechanisms don't really make sense. They're first of all not even clearly elucidated, but we see that low sodium diet reduces urinary calcium and it helps cysteine excretion. So that's harder to remember, so make sure you remember that. And then this one's a little harder to remember, this positive sodium nitroprusside test. Okay. And then also, you know what? Children, you see children, Cysteine Stones in children. Okay? So that's it.